If you have shoulder pain and maybe it hurts reaching behind the back or going overhead, you're in the right place because in this video I'm going to show you why this happens and what you can do to fix this. What's up guys, Dr. Nick Bonforte. In this video we're going to go all over the shoulder complex. Now the shoulder can be really complex. It's a very mobile joint. However, we need also stability too. There's different components that we can dive into, strength and mobility. In this video we're going to focus on a mobility aspect that has some strength components into this. Now for efficiency purposes, if you want to skip down below, look at the timestamp so that you can skip to the exercises, then be sure to do that. In each exercise, I'll be going a little bit more in depth, but if you want to skip over that, look at the timestamps, check out the exercises, and let's get right to it. All right, so this first one up is the cross body stretch, and I'm gonna be building isometrics into this mix from a pales contraction and a rails contraction. So with this one, we wanna really emphasize pulling your arm across your body, and once you're into the stretch, you wanna squeeze your shoulder blade back. That would be the stretch period that you hold it for. Typically, I like to hold it anywhere from 30 seconds up to 2 minutes. After the stretch period is done, you're gonna perform 2 contractions. One into the hand, where you're gonna be pushing your arm into the supporting hand and building up an isometric contraction. We'll hold that isometric contraction for 10 seconds. The other contraction that you're gonna do is after you're done pushing down, you're gonna peel away from your hand for 10 seconds. Then after that, you take the supporting hand and then you're into a new position of the stretch, and then you repeat the cycle. So you wanna make sure you keep that sequence in mind. It's gonna be a stretch period for 30 seconds. After the 30 seconds, you push down for 10 seconds into the supporting hand, and then you peel away for 10 seconds. And then you repeat that entire sequence of a stretch hold for 30 seconds, contraction down for 10 seconds, contraction away for 10 seconds, 4 times. Why? Because it gives you that 2 minute of time under tension and duration and input to the shoulder complex. Just make sure you're not rushing through the stretch period. And also keep in mind, squeezing the shoulder blade back as the arm is across the body. That will really emphasize that stretch to the back of the shoulder. So with the crossbody stretch, it could look like a simple thing to do and it could be overlooked and people won't do it. But the thing is, it could be really effective, and it's effective because it targets the posterior capsule of the shoulder. When we have shoulder pain or discomfort, it hurts to bring the arm overhead. It hurts to bring the arm behind the back because the back of the shoulder, the posterior capsule, doesn't function well. So if we work on it from a mobility standpoint, we help give it some slack. Now, when we cross our arm across the body, the biggest thing to note in that exercise is when you squeeze the shoulder blade back, you're creating that relative motion between the arm bone and the shoulder blade and stretching that posterior capsule a little bit. If you just swing your arm across the body and you're not having any mind-body connection to what the shoulder blade is doing, it's ineffective. And that's why those things don't work, because you're not even doing it right. If we create more intention with it and what you're actually doing in a correct way, you can really get the results and build consistency into that. Then that's really when you start to make some really good headway. So the key with that stretch is to really focus on that relative motion. When you cross your arm across your body and you squeeze your shoulder blade back, that will pin that relative motion, and you hold that for the stretch period. And then also with the contractions, you're teaching the body how to perform in different ranges of motion on tissue length. So when my arm is across my body, if I'm here and I'm putting my posterior capsule on length, then me building contractions, pushing down and peeling away, it teaches the body how to own different ranges of motion. And that's the idea when you build that over time, so that it can actually create the lengthening of the area that we're trying to target. When we build more consistency and input into a stretch like that, then it allows us over time to bring our arm overhead and reach behind the back much more with ease and less discomfort because it's actually moving better. So I love that one for beginning stages, especially when it's inflamed and it hurts. So with this exercise, after we stretch it, we want to put the tissue through eccentric lengthening because we opened up the window to stretch it. So with this one, I'm just using the dumbbell and I'm moving my arm into slow controlled internal rotation. That is putting the posterior capsule, the external rotators of the shoulder, on stretch. But the idea isn't to just collapse down really fast. You want to put it under some slow eccentric load. So I'm controlling it down, and you'll notice I'm bringing it up with my opposite hand because we're really just trying to bias the eccentric component here. With eccentrics, I like reps, 12, 15, 3 sets. That way you can get more input into the system. And eccentric also helps extensibility with the tissue because it creates what's called sarcomeres in series, really helping the tissue actually lengthening. Now, if the shoulder is uncomfortable, sometimes going into internal rotation in that position will hurt. So I also have a modification that you could do is bringing the arm across the body in an eccentric fashion, but this is self-assisted. So you'll notice I'm using my hand to pull myself across the body, but I'm actually resisting the motion. I'm not just having no mind to it and I'm just pulling my arm. I'm resisting my arm from pulling my arm across my body. So as I'm pulling across, I'm taking my opposite arm and I'm pushing into my hand to build that tension into the shoulder as I'm ultimately letting my hand win and pull my arm across. So you want to create that mind-body connection of really resisting that motion. And when you do that, you're putting eccentric load to the posterior capsule or the back of the shoulder in that manner, just going into a modified position that could be a little bit more tolerable, especially if the shoulder is a little bit more uncomfortable, like with the eccentrics of shoulder IR. So those are two alternatives to ultimately give you the option to eccentrically load the back of the shoulder with this one. So eccentric loading is key when you're trying to actually improve mobility. Why? Because it creates sarcomeres in series, meaning it literally makes the tissue longer. And how do we do that? We put our muscles through a lengthening range of motion and get to our end ranges with a little bit of extra force to it to ultimately teach the body that it can control it and go past it. Now with eccentrics, we have to be careful where we're not pushing through extreme end ranges of motion where you could barely hold on to the end range and you're about to snap your tissue. Like, that's not the idea with it. The idea is to get yourself further into ranges of motion with the assistance of load and controlling it through that range of motion to help prepare the tissue to get longer and adapt to those. So in these two exercises, these variations, there's one you go into shoulder internal rotation and then one going across the body to ultimately bias those areas to actually lengthen into those motions. Now, what I like to do with eccentrics is to control it with load in a controlled fashion versus a fast eccentric. Fast eccentric could be used for more sport performance and stuff, but in this video, slow eccentrics is the purpose of this one to really teach the extensibility of the tissue and sets and reps, really getting that 3-4 sets of 12, 15 to get more input into that system with this. Now with these, be careful of not forcing end range positions, modifying positions so that it could actually help the shoulder out. With this exercise, it's activation. So after we loosened up everything, we put it through a stretch, we put it through eccentric loading, our window is open to teach the body how to improve better into ranges of motion. In this one, we're gonna be focusing on a functional internal rotation liftoff. Why? Because that puts the posterior capsule on stretch. So the idea and the theme with this one is to work on the posterior capsule on stretch, get it more flexible, and work into this. So with this one, my hands are behind my back, and you wanna think about squeezing the shoulder blades back really hard, you maintain that, and then you lift your arms away from your back. Now this, you could rep out and be strategic with it and have fun with it. You could manipulate the sets and the rep to make a challenge for you. As an example, in this one, I'm just lifting off my back, holding it for briefly, and then coming right back down. But you could lift off and hold it for 5 seconds. You could hold it for 10 seconds, come back down and do less reps, 5 reps or 6 reps. Or if you wanna just go into the position and then come out of it, you could build up to maybe 15 reps, 20 reps, so that you're actually getting more input to it. So you can manipulate it for whatever's gonna be a challenge for you in this. But form is key with this. Make sure the shoulders are back and you lift off. You wanna be careful of not slouching over, dumping the shoulder forward, because you're just moving on a compensation throughout this. You wanna focus on keeping an upright back, getting your shoulders back, and then lifting your arms away without compensations of letting the shoulder just dump forward. So form is key with this. Now also keep in mind, depending on the ranges of motion we're working into, you wanna be careful of not going too far up your back with your hands, because if the shoulder's uncomfortable, you'll have to address it in a different range of motion. So if you can't get to the low back, you can go a little bit lower, go towards your glutes, and then you work into that range of motion, and you focus on getting further and further up into an internally rotated functional position to then lift off of your back. So with the functional IR liftoff, we're creating functionality into the range of motion to ultimately teach the body how to improve the range and the ability to get the arm into aggravating positions. When the posterior capsule is stiff and tight and the shoulder doesn't feel good, that motion likely will be limited. However, doing the stretches, doing the eccentrics, and then finishing with that, we're giving the shoulder the opportunity to then function in that range of motion while we worked on opening that positioning. That's a lot more strategic than just trying to force the arm into position and work into it. We're teaching the body how to calm everything down, get into the position, and then work into that position versus just avoiding it. Now also keep in mind, you have to make sure that you're not forcing your arm up your back as far as you can. Work into the range of motion you got. If you could only get to maybe to the side of your hip, it's the concepts here. You can get to the side of the hip, squeeze your shoulder blades back and perform the same thing. You can get to your upper glutes. You can go then further and further up your back. It's the idea to take the concepts that you learn through this and then perform them. Also, you have to create that activation after you're done stretching and doing those things so that you give the body that safe environment that you can actually function in new ranges of motion. If you don't activate into new ranges of motion, how is it ever going to learn? So creating those activations and those strength components into different ranges of motion is key when you're trying to really improve mobility. Well, there you go. Hopefully you learned some things throughout this video. We focused on 3 exercises really from a mobility standpoint that mixes in strength components to it, like the eccentrics and the activation. But the concept and the theme was really focusing on mobility, the posterior capsule of the shoulder, which then played a role into actually going into reaching behind the back. As you know in the beginning, when you reach behind the back and you go into this internally rotated position, you're stretching the back of the shoulder. So we worked on that area, getting better throughout this. So hopefully, again, you learned some things, you found value in this video. And if you did find value in this video, I greatly appreciate it if you support the channel by subscribing down below, leave any comments down below. And until next time, this is Dr. Nick.